Hello again and welcome to Back Chat from the Arc in Headingley, and what a wonderful panel we have for you this week. We say that every week, but this week it's even more wonderful than ever. We've got Danny Lockwood from League Weekly newspaper, Gareth Walker from all the rest of the newspapers, Daily Mirror, Sunday People, and a legend is with us as well. It's great to have Luke Robinson along too. So what are we going to talk about this? Well, let's talk about the weekend we've just had. For starters, Catalan, first win of the season, how important that was for them.
Yeah, it was a chance really for OKR to put a little bit of clear water between them, but it was a poor game, Dave. Two sides that I think are going to struggle to rise above where they are in the league table right now. But yeah, Catalan needed it badly as a club. Steve McNamara as a coach needed it. You know, it was really important to him. But I didn't see a lot of signs of life in there for the rest of the year to come.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a desperate game. It was a poor game, wasn't it? It was I mean, that is a desperate win for the Catalan Dragons.
Yeah, I think desperate's the right word, isn't it? I mean, okay, I would have been desperate to win as well, but Catalans at home needed to kind of put a line in the sand, if you would, and start again. And as Danny said, there weren't many terrific signs that this is going to be a great turning point, but maybe just that victory and a bit of confidence might start to see them on the up a bit, because you know the season so far has been fairly disastrous, hasn't it?
What does that, I mean, give us a player's view on that, Luke. I mean, what does that do for Catalan now? The fact that they've had such a bad start to the season, that they've now finally got that win under their belts. Is there a kind of a discernible lift of confidence within the camp as a result of that?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, it's more relief than anything else, but I don't think the confidence comes back straight away. You know, you need a run of games. I don't think one win. So let's be fair, you know, OKR, who you assume is going to be battling down at the bottom for the bottom places, I think going to a massive surge of confidence go throughout the club. I think it's more relief rather than confidence. I think they need to put another 1 or 2 or 3 more wins for.
Yeah. They need performance levels, don't they? I mean, the one win that OKR have had this season was at home against Catalans. So I think they'd have been really thinking this is our opportunity to double up, get some more points on the board. But if you're the coaching squad, if you're Steve Mack and his people, and you're looking at that and you're going over the tapes, you're not seeing great signs of life still, and that is what they need to have, because the rest of the clubs that are watching that are thinking, bring these guys on, because that's.
I mean, it makes no odds whether you score all your points from kicks or you don't. You know, they're still worth the same amount. Yeah. But I just think from an attacking perspective, when I watched the game, there wasn't that much fluency in the way I think nearly every point came from a kick in the game, you know. So the confidence levels, attacking wise in particular, they'll probably still be a little bit down. We're
gonna come back to that game in just a sec, because we're seeing 1 or 2 professional penalties being won by players. It'd be interesting to get your view on that in just a minute. But first of all, just carry on looking ahead, looking back to the weekend. Leeds on Thursday night, Huddersfield. We went to Headingley, we weren't sure what we were going to find at Leeds, and it is obviously a site that's being rebuilt, but it still felt like a very decent occasion. They managed to turn that into a nice positive, didn't they? Absolutely,
hats off to the people at Leeds, because you know, 2 things: that the South Stand would kind of partially open, so it wasn't. We had that playoff game with Hull last year, didn't we, where it was completely empty and it seemed like a really weird atmosphere. You didn't get that because half of it was open. But then this temporary North Stand was almost a sight to behold, wasn't it? You say a temporary stand at a game and you kind of wonder what you're turning up to. Yeah. But it worked, you know, it was full and it did create an event. They had some teething problems in getting in and out.
It was like an old-fashioned rugby ground, wasn't it?
It really was.
Like you say, I thought, though, this is going to affect Leeds this year, playing on effectively a building site, because that's what it is when you look behind the scenes. And I thought they did a terrific job. And Leeds rose to the occasion and kept that, you know, that hoodoo that they have over Hull at home. I think it's 2007 now.
Yeah, I think it's
since they won there. Yeah. And I think they got out of jail a little bit. Did Leeds. I think Mr McDermott can thank the video ref for some benevolent calls that went their way. But Hull still a ways off it. I think they really miss Danny Houghton and obviously when they're going in there short-handed, it's a big ask.
Yeah, the South Stand was fantastic.
I'm quite chuffed it's gone, if I'm being honest. Because I used to go to bed with that song in my mind.
But it's still going. The trumpet, I mean, I don't know who does it. I don't know if the club organised this or whether it's the fans amongst themselves, but the trumpeters there, the music's there, the atmosphere was there throughout.
I used to get in after Friday night when I'd lay down next to my wife and I'd be humming that song. My wife was like, would you shut up, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. But no, it's a great atmosphere. I think Leeds is one of the best atmospheres to play in. As a player, you like to go there. And like you said, the atmosphere is still great, even though it is a bit of a building site.
It's going to be something to see
it
when
looks
it's
impressive,
finished.
doesn't it? When you see what it's going to be like when it finishes,
Absolutely.
it looks an impressive structure.
100% record goals. Wakefield lose at Wigan, but sounded like a good game. Didn't see it myself, but it sounded like a good game. St Helens still riding high. Fabulous win against Warrington. So say it to the team now.
Yeah, I think. I think we all said that, and we have been saying it since the start of the season, haven't we? I like this kid, Danny Richardson. He's really. He's making a name for himself. He's making a real impression beyond just St Helens as well. So you have to say that it's a question now of who's going to stop them, and certainly on the evidence so far, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
I think St Helens has seen the fruits of a really, really good academy team. I don't know if you know much about the academy setup, but they've had a really, really dominant side for about 2 or 3 years, and all them lads, Regan, Grace, Richardson, they've all come through together, and I think Saints have seen the fruits of that. I also like what they've done. What he's decided to with John Wilkin. They've rather than being a bit of an edge back row player, they've done what Wigan have done with Lockers for many years. They've put him in the middle. He's a little bit of a link.
Yeah.
He's a little bit the orchestra. He's the one controlling things really. He's the link between the halves, and he's helping Richardson. But at the same time, I love the way Richardson plays. He's got all the tools. He runs the ball. He's got great decision making. He kicks the ball well. I think the future's very bright for him.
Well, I think that was potentially the moment of the weekend, wasn't it? That try he set up when on the last tackle, he's got his head up, he feints to kick and then went straight through the gap and ends up kicking perfectly for Mark Percival to score. What a try, but for a young half-back to play with his head up like that and that confidence at that age, that's just great for the whole game.
That's what you want to see in half-backs particularly, isn't it? Is confidence. And like you say, he'll get his knocks because it's a long season and he'll come up against 1 or 2 players that, that put him in his place. And we'll see the measure of the kid when how he bounces back from that. But another hat trick for Mark Percival.
Second of the season.
Yeah, so
there's a message being laid down there, isn't there, for the England coach?
Especially if we've seen the England squad's been named as well in the last week. So I think he's stating his case as the Premier English centre at the moment, certainly on form. And I think that Wayne Bennett and the coaching staff have to take a good look at that. Yeah. But right now it's all plain sailing for Saints, and so long as they avoid big injuries, they're going to take some stock.
Well, I mean, Matty Smith's an interesting one. He's had big injuries, but I mean, you've got a grand final winning half-back there who can't get in at the moment. He's being linked with other clubs. Should Hull KR or whoever go and grab him, people are talking about. But even when the injuries come, I think they have got cover. Theo Farge is playing off the bench. They've got 4 genuinely top half-backs there, so they do look well positioned. And how Matty Smith's season plays out, it'll be interesting to watch.
You look at that spine. We've not even mentioned Ben Barber.
No. Or James Roby.
Oh, James Roby. Yeah. I mean, you're 9 and you're 1 and you're 6 and you're 7 when they're playing as well as they are. Wow.
I think James Roby's playing some of the best rugby he's ever played.
Yeah.
He's one of my favourite players. I've had the luxury to play against him, and unfortunately I've had to play against him a lot of times. But I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest players to ever play Super League.
Yeah.
I think he's that good, and I just think at the moment, probably 1 or 2 years ago, everyone started saying he's not the same player that he was. I think he's playing the best rugby he ever has. I think
the last 12 months has been really.
Been great.
I mean, he got his way back into that England side really.
And England looked better, I thought, when he was on the field. Absolutely. As a general thing in the World Cup.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he's going to be the man, isn't he? Because Hodgson's going to be injured, isn't he? Certainly for the mid-season test.
Right now, you'd struggle to make a case for anyone else. I think. Dave.
Darryl Clark's obviously been put in there, but Roby, you'd say at the moment he's head and shoulders. Right, cheating. Luke Robinson, cheating. Players, they're just a bunch of cheats at the moment. What's going on?
Yeah, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, but he's going a little bit too far for my liking. It's been around for ages. When somebody lays in the ruck, there's a bit of it goes down to interpretation. Terry Newton used to tell me when I was a young lad at Wigan, trip up, knock the ball on. Obviously, I didn't dare do that because I was a young kid, but he used to do it, and he used to get a penalty every time that he did it. We had it last year, didn't we? Basically, nines were picking the ball up and throwing the ball back. Yeah. When somebody wasn't clearing, wasn't rolling away. We saw it with Sean O'Loughlin and who was it? The OKR player this week. The OKR player.
We had it with the hooker at
McLaurin.
Yes, thank you. Michael McLaurin was the one that infuriated Tim Sheen.
So McLaurin's throwing it out, and the Wakefield, I think Randall did it at Wigan as well. So there's been 2 penalties this week, and I just think there needs to be a bit of a clear up of the situation. Do they need to roll away? Are you allowed to throw the ball at them?
I think the frustrating thing is there was supposedly a clear up about this time last year, wasn't there, where we got Steve Jansen coming out and they said this is unsportsmanlike behaviour, we're going to stop it, and it does seem to have creeped in, which I think has annoyed people.
I just think it's really negative.
It's not just that, it's the obstructions. We're seeing tries disallowed because of obstructions. We're seeing defenders running into dummy runners. Yeah. We're seeing that more and more often.
We seem to, I thought we'd got over this, because about 5 or 6 years ago, it threatened to make the game a mockery, didn't it? Just deliberate buying a penalty by running into the dummy runner. He couldn't get out of the way if he wanted. And I thought we'd got over that, but we saw last week, particularly in that Leeds-Hull game, you know, the ball was long gone. I think it was Carl Ablett kind of bought the collision, bought the penalty. Yeah. You know, they were appealing to go upstairs before the try had been scored, in effect. Yeah. And I do think it's in the gift of the officials to use a little bit of common sense, and that was the call afterwards. You know, I think Dean Hadley was saying we need common sense here. And was it Phil Bentham, I think, on the video ref in that game? Yeah. You don't get more experience than Phil.
Do the refs need a bit of help then? I mean, in Australia they've got a player who's sitting in the booth with them to give them the player's interpretation, to say as a player. So you look on Twitter. I mean, after that one, you look on Twitter and other social media platforms, and you can see players and ex-players going, that should have been a try, that should have been a try. The player's interpretation is different to the refs. So if a player sat there in the booth, I'll put this to you, then you might get a better interpretation.
Yeah, perhaps I think the help they need is perhaps the leeway to give that common sense, because if you play the rule as it's written at the moment, which Lee Radford, to his credit, said after the game, then maybe that's the right decision, but they don't seem to have that leeway to introduce the common sense.
Well, when did they rewrite it back? Because we got away from that, didn't we? You know, they were letting that go. If the ball's cleared, they're going about the inside-outside shoulder. That ball was well gone. There was no question of Ablett being able to get involved in that play. So, and I don't agree with the ex-player argument, Dave, because if a guy with Phil Bentham's experience isn't up to that by now, well, then he shouldn't be there in the first place.
Luke?
I think it's like Gareth says, if it's black and white in the referee's rule book, they've got to stick to that. Yeah. So maybe it's a time for them to either rewrite it slightly, or there is a case for use your common sense. Yeah. You know, if a player's obstructed and he can't influence the play.
But you'd not as a player, as an ex-player, you'd know that instinctively.
That's a try.
Yeah,
I see that's true.
Why not involve the players in any rewriting of the rule? And in a coach, you could sit down and say, look, this scenario here, that could work definitely.
We have a coaching advisory panel of sorts, don't we? I mean, Stuart Cummins is shouting that it's a try, and he's one of the guys that's involved in coaching and the referees and tweaking the rules such as they need it. But we started off talking about cheating, Dave. Yeah. And I do think it's creeping more and more into the game, where players are trying to buy an advantage in all kinds of situations. And we as a sport always prided ourselves on not being the footballers of the world. And I don't like to see it.
No, I don't like to see it, but, you know, winning is everything, isn't it? And if they are obstructed and it's in the rule books, then they're not doing anything wrong. For me, I think there needs to be common sense. If he's so far away from the play, can't influence it, it's not obstructed.
Do we get to the stage where, I mean, football, they have this big debate about pulling in the corner kicks, pulling shirts in the penalty area, and people say start sending people off for that or give penalties for that, and it stops. Do we need to think about that in rugby league? You know, if you're trying to milk a penalty by running into a line as a defender to try and get the referee to disallow the try, do we start thinking about sin binning players who've done that on an obvious basis?
I think that is a difficult one. I think that not necessarily sin binning, but reversing penalties. They're trying to buy a penalty by holding on, penalise them for doing it. I think Robert Hicks was the referee in that game, and I don't know if some of the players these days target a particular referee who they think they can get away with. I don't think they'd have done that to Ben Taylor, what they did to Hicks, and I'm talking now about players really getting in around the referee, back-chatting. At one point he did give a 10-yard penalty, I think. We need to see more of that. They need to shut the players up and get them out of their faces. Then.
Let's ask Luke Robinson about that, because he's told me before that you played different. When you were a player, teams would play a different approach to a game as to whether the TV officials were there or if it wasn't a TV official.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, back in the day when I was talking about Nathan Brown, might be my coach at the time, you knew when you were on TV certain times, for example, the obstruction rule, you knew you had to be squeaky clean, you had to make sure you got through the line. You knew when you weren't on TV that didn't apply as much. Yeah. So you could start running outside shoulders a little bit more. Obviously, as an obstruction to get through as a leading player, you need to run it inside shoulders so the defending player's on your outside so he can get off.
Yeah.
when the video wasn't there, you could probably just sometimes hedge your bets and run on the outside shoulder, which potentially blocks him slightly.
Yeah.
Look, this is going back to the old argument though again. There should be a TV and, you know, it should be the same game every single week. Yeah. The problem for us is we do not play the same game week to week. Yeah. It differs depending on whether you're on TV or whether you're not. But
we've had this debate before. We're not going to have a TV official at every game.
No, I would, if we're going that way, I'd rather say let's not have obstruction decisions on the TV thing and just let the referee who's in the line there make the call and we accept it, because you can debate it after we've seen the replays. So I'd rather no video referrals for obstruction. Let the referee decide it. Just for the whether he's in the field of play or the grounding of the ball and just the obstruction thing in particular is something you can debate and can be, you know, 50-50 after you've watched it. So let the referee decide.
Ooh, that's controversial. We'll have lots more controversial stuff in the second half of Back Chat as well. We'll be back with you right after this break. Hello and welcome to part 2 of Back Chat from the Arc in Headingley. As you can see, a venerable guest list joins us today. Danny Lockwood, who certainly fits the venerable role, Luke Robinson and also Gareth Walker from the newspapers, all here. Right, second half. Let's talk about Salford. Problem like Salford have got at the moment. Marwan Kukash came and went. All that big promise of it's going to be fantastic, they're going to win medals, they're going to win trophies. Never really happened. Now he's gone, they seem to be in a financial fix. Gareth O'Brien has gone to Toronto this week. Salford say not a financial necessity. You suspect it might be?
Yeah, well, all the talk before the actual signing was confirmed that was they need to cut the salary cap by this amount and that, and then we had this very interesting statement that said they didn't need or want to sell Gareth O'Brien and they will replace him. But I think you look at the facts, over the last 12 months from Salford's squad, they've lost Todd Carney, Justin Carney, Michael Dobson, Ben Murdoch-Masila, now Gareth O'Brien. You would imagine all those 5 players would be top-end earners within their squad, and with no disrespect to the ability of the guys that have come in, you wouldn't think they would have that earning power. So that there's been a lot of cuts made already at Salford, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any more now over the coming weeks.
And you really feel for Ian Watson. He did a great job last year, and it's almost like he's having it chopped from underneath him.
Yeah, I really like the brand of rugby they play as well. It's exciting. I don't think they've been that far away performance-wise. You know, they had a couple of really sort of easy tries to Castleford with the knock-ons this week. But the rugby they've been playing has been pretty good. I like this, like I say, I like the brand of rugby that he plays. I do feel extremely sorry for him because it doesn't matter how much time and effort you put into the players that you've got. If they keep getting, you know, pulled from under you and taken away, then it's really hard to build a culture as well as a good playing group.
I think that's the important part there. It isn't just the loss of personnel, as big as that is, and the adjustments that they've made after the loss of people like Carney, Murdoch-Masila. You know, a player that's been integral to the success of the last few years, Gareth O'Brien, you know, that's a big blow. If Robert Louis goes, and there's talk about that, you know,
okay, coming back for him.
You know, it is that it becomes insidious. It gets inside the club, the culture. How do you keep that team mentality when you don't have the team left? And it's difficult to see, both on the field and off the field, in terms of making it a sustainable business without Dr. Kukash's money, what the future holds for Salford that can be remotely called bright.
Because it feels like a real gateway club for rugby league, isn't it? I mean, other supporters, club supporters, will bridle at this, but Salford feels like it's got a little extra significance to rugby league because of where it is. You know, it's right on the edge of Manchester. Salford can succeed. They can maybe bring in that bigger audience from Manchester. So it's one of those that you really worry for their future because of what they could potentially give the game.
Yeah, and you look at the reaction on social media from their supporters when this O'Brien thing. I don't think many of the supporters were buying the fact that they didn't need to sell Gareth O'Brien as per the statements. So the fans themselves are worried, and they've been so up and down, haven't they, the last few years during Marwan Kukash's reign, and you know, the times where it looks like they might have cracked it, and then there's been big off-field controversies, or from one crisis to another. Ian Watson, who you've talked about, has kind of kept the ship sailing through all of that. But you hope that there's not another big one around the corner, because this might be the one that's the toughest to overcome.
Yeah. And it's really difficult for players. I mean, I know everyone thinks that professional sports people are just robots that can basically put everything onto the side. When you don't know if your mortgage is going to be paid, when you don't know if the club's actually going to be around, it does obviously affect you. It affects your preparation, it affects your performances. So there'll be a lot of worried people, I think, at Salford as well.
I think it speaks to a bigger issue as well, Dave, in terms of, you mentioned Manchester quite rightly, and the gateway club being Salford. I think, especially with the RFL announcing that it's going to be relocating to Manchester, we have to almost look, to me, at Manchester as a project, and whether that involves Swinton and Rochdale and Oldham and Salford or whatever, even throwing it further west to Lee, we really need something in there to kind of fly the flag for Rugby League in that area. And right now, especially with what's happening at Lee as well, I find it difficult to see positive signs at all, but we need some from somewhere.
You're not throwing up a merger, are you?
I'm not saying anything.
Well, no. I mean, I'm going to bring you on this one, Gareth, because you're a Rochdale fan. You don't hide that light under any bushel. You are a Rochdale Hornets fan, born and bred. There has been a suggestion in the past of maybe a merger, Rochdale, Oldham, Swinton, and rebranding them as a Manchester club. Now, how would that sit with you? I mean, those clubs they're not punching above their weight at the moment, are they? So how would that sit with you as a Rochdale fan? I
guess they are in some ways, just in surviving in the Championship, but obviously I'd be vehemently against it. And the thing I never get with these suggestions is, and with the Salford rebrand to Manchester, that was another thing that was talked about not long ago, I was against that as well, because I don't think you miraculously drop a club in Manchester and give it a Manchester game and get 5,000 people coming to watch it, because who are they? They won't come from the clubs that you've ruined by leaving them behind. And I don't think there's 5,000 people in Manchester just desperate to go and watch a club on a Saturday afternoon or whatever. I think that you've got to go another way about it.
How would you go about it?
It's difficult, isn't it? I don't think there's a magical short-term thing to Manchester. I've lived in the city of Manchester for a while. I'm from the area, from Rochdale. I don't think you can just drop a club in there and think it's going to have this huge amount of support. I don't think that would happen.
I said that, David, and I don't believe that either. I do think that you will have to leave these clubs to find their own level. And I think that ultimately, as Super League itself progresses, I think they'll go by the wayside. I think they will remain good community clubs. I think they will find a new reality if and when we do have a restructured Super League and the money all starts funneling back to the top and leaves a lot of those clubs behind. But it may well be that the loss of a Salford or a Lee paves the way for a New York or a Perth or a different, brighter future.
But are we not looking too far afield? I mean, we were talking about this on a different platform this last week, and it's great, it's very exciting. Boston, Toronto already in, potentially Boston, New York, as you say, Perth, all the rest of it. But we've got Manchester, this huge city that is a really sexy city at the moment, is right on the doorstep of Rugby League. We can't crack Manchester. Don't we need to crack Manchester?
Well, that's where I just started this conversation from. You'd like to think that someone has a plan,
so
but if it isn't, what
would you do? How would you do it? If you were given a blank sheet of paper, how would you do it?
I would look to building one of those Salford and trying to find a way to build Salford back up. They are the obvious club in that they've still got a presence in Super League. But if Dr. Kulkash with all of his money can't do it, you have to ask if it can be done.
Yeah. Manchester? Any quick fix ideas for Manchester?
No, not from me. But I've obviously played at Salford, and they were a really, really loyal bunch of supporters, but that's what they were.
Yeah. It was Salford.
It was Salford.
They're not moving Chingy to go and support a Manchester club overnight, are they? No chance, I can't.
No, they told me from the get-go, we are Salford, not Manchester.
It's a different city.
It's a different city. We are bigger than Manchester. Yes. We are a different city. We are better than Manchester.
So we're saying that the Rugby League headquarters is moving out of Rugby League territory now, then?
Yeah, it is. It is. Where's the Rugby League presence? I mean,
we've got Manchester Rangers, who are quite ambitious conference club, aren't they? Who want to come into the professional ranks, and maybe that is a way to do it, but that's a real long-term project, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
that's a lot of building, and that's not going to happen in even 5 years' time, is it? So
Why are we not playing more matches in Manchester at the very least? We play a grand final there every year.
I've no opposition to that.
Yeah,
I think if you can find a right venue and promote it the right way, I'm all for having a big game in Manchester.
Yeah, Magic's been great up in Newcastle, but it was terrific at the Etihad. But they were forced away from that. It would be great to see it back there, and maybe now that the RFL is there, we will see that.
I mean, in Sydney, for example, a lot of the clubs don't have a home ground, so to speak. They play at the big stadiums in Sydney, don't they? And why are we not? Why are we not encouraging clubs to play more big? And Wigan played in London the other year at Charlton.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't they be playing at Old Trafford?
I think it would actually be quite embarrassing if we were saying that we were taking roadshow games to our own backyard. And there'd be nothing worse.
It's not our backyard.
There'd be nothing worse than, you know, the Rhinos tried this, didn't they, with the Danny Maguire homecoming? Let's see if we can fill Ellen Road, and they were a long way short. So I think that throwing in a few thousand to rattle around, you know, whether it be the Etihad or Old Trafford, is not the answer. Because I actually think when you watch the NRL, Dave, you see games that they take back to the Leichhardt Oval, you know, Coggera, which the Dragons did last week. They look so much better occasions than when they're rattling about half empty in the Allianz.
Well, I think their TV money is such that they're not bothered if they've got these near empty stadiums sometimes, which I don't like personally. I'm like Danny, I'd rather see a game back at the traditional ground and the full. But they don't seem to mind the fact that they can have 15,000, 20,000 rolling around in that Olympic stadium, whereas I don't think it would be a good look for us over here to go to something that big of a stadium. But you know, maybe there's a way they can find. Manchester City have this other ground, don't they, now, where their reserves play. I think that's about 8,000 capacity. Yeah. Maybe you could take a Toronto game or two there or something and try and build it that way. But Old Trafford and the Etihad, not for a regular season game.
I mean, Liverpool's another city that again is supposedly in our backyard. And Rugby League, you can walk around Manchester, you can walk around Liverpool. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who can talk to you about Rugby League.
I am one or the other. It seems like in Rugby League you either got to be you're up for expansion, as in you're Perth, or you know you're Toronto, or you're very it's Castleford, Lockley, we're going to go from there type of thing. The Heartland goes. I'm both. I haven't got an issue which way we do it. I just think as long as there's some type of strategy and a bit of thought process going into how we're going to do it and which way is best. I ain't got an issue if Toronto come in and somebody else come in and Perth come in, or Liverpool or Manchester. I just feel like whatever we do, there needs to be a plan behind what we're doing, and a bit of a thought process.
I think we need people like Luke and Jamie Jones Buchanan's another who can be as passionate about your Siddle or your Stanley Rangers as a Toronto boss. Why can't we have both?
Yeah.
You know, the roots are important, but if there is somewhere like Toronto where it looks like it might really work in a short space of time, as a Rugby League fan, why wouldn't you want to get behind that?
Well, you back the winning formulas, don't you? I mean, and the fact is that when we took the Four Nations final to Liverpool, it was a terrific event.
It was fantastic.
It was absolutely.
It was a really surprisingly fantastic event.
I think we're going back there with New Zealand at the end of the year, aren't we? Yeah. So, you know, and St Helens would argue that they're pretty close to Liverpool. And
well, they had a spell of Saints in the City, didn't they? Yeah. I think they branded it that. And that, I don't know too much about that, but it seems to have withered away now.
It's a football town, isn't it? It's Liverpool or Everton at its core, Dave. So I think that going to play at Anfield is cracking. I think it's a good idea. Let's spread the geography without going too far. But I don't think we should get caught up over it. I think we should got to concentrate still on what we do best.
Yeah. We need a chief executive, a permanent chief executive. You're the man in the know, Danny. What's happening on the chief executive's role? Ralph Rimmer's doing the job at the moment, wants the job full time.
Yeah.
When are we going to get a decision on this? Who's it going to be?
I think that.
What kind of person is it going to be?
I would be surprised. I would be surprised if we get a full-time chief executive before the clubs have decided what the shape of the competition is going to be beyond this year. Yeah. Because the fact is, if you're a potential chief executive of the sport, you're someone thinking, I'm going to keep my eye on this job. You want to know what the job is, and right now no one does. So Ralph is throwing himself about as interim chief executive, trying to tackle the real financial constraints that the sport has right now anyway, trying to keep a grip on things, trying to keep the Super League clubs in some kind of a dialogue for the future. So until you get clarity on what the shape of the sport is going to be beyond, I don't think you'll have top quality candidates throwing the hat in the ring, Dave. We know that Eddie Hearn isn't interested in it. He wouldn't mind having a little play and a dabble, seeing if there's an opportunity there to make a few quid. But that's not running the sport. And so I think that, and I'm not hearing many whispers, I don't know if Gareth is or Luke, about potential candidates. Right now, I would imagine everybody's keeping their hats firmly out of the ring.
You're not reading your own paper then? Because one of your columnists this week, Robert Elston, is being linked.
Well, he's been linked before, hasn't he? Yeah. He was one of the first names.
And that's another thing. Is this for the Super League clubs or for the RFL? Is there going to be different roles? Who's going to have the most power? All these things that needs to be answered.
If you're having a Super League boss and an RFL boss, well, to me, those days have now gone with the departure of Nigel Wood, and you're going to have one boss for the sport.
Yeah, I agree.
And so Robert Elston, I wouldn't imagine that the salary of the job we're putting up would match what he's getting at the moment.
No.
So. Yeah, you'll always get those names thrown about, but I bet his CV isn't on anybody's desk.
Well, I mean, it's very interesting with Robert, because we know Robert because he was involved at the RFL, obviously he was on the board at Castleford, but if my memory serves me correctly, he was Maurice Lindsay's preferred candidate. When Richard Lewis got the job, I think Maurice Lindsay was pushing Robert Elston at that stage. So, you know, in a different universe, he might already be running Rugby League. But does the sport need somebody who understands the sport, or does it need a Richard Lewis type figure who can come in from the outside and cast a very neutral eye across everything?
My own personal, I would always rather have someone who understands the sport in those positions. It's the same with me with I never understand why they bring marketers in who have no idea about Rugby League, because to me you want someone with that knowledge and passion to be able to sell it. At the same time, you want a candidate who, maybe like you, Rob Elstrom, who's been in sports administration and has been at the top level. So there's not that many of those around, but I would always move towards someone who has some kind of knowledge of Rugby League, because I think that's important when we take our game to new people.
But again, I mean, we get frustrated because we know how good this game is, and we can't understand why the whole world isn't watching Rugby League, because it's a fantastic sport. It's got everything you want. So maybe we do need someone from the outside to come in and say, I understand why the rest of the world isn't watching this, and I can give you a solution to it.
Yeah, I'm not sure which way I'd look at it. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. You know, if you promote from within who's already been in that setup. But then, I understand what Gareth says, well, you bring somebody in who doesn't actually know the sport, doesn't know who we're targeting. It's a real dilemma. I mean, for me, it's just, I'm with you, it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating. I just don't feel like our game's marketed as well as it should, and I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah.
But, you know.
How long have we got?
About a minute before the break.
Yeah, but I think, listen, if you're looking for someone who has sporting knowledge, then your eyes go down south, don't they? You look to the NRL to say, is there someone there bringing Blake Solly back? You know, perhaps. I personally wouldn't be too keen on that, because I think it's a completely different marketplace. But the fact is this: certainly in my years in the sport, it's been a long time since we had anybody in an executive position that understood how to market to a rugby league audience, and so. Beyond the obvious names on the table right now, I think it's a big ask.
It's not just marketing the sport, it's playing the politics of the sport, because there's so many politics to play before you get in a position to make any decisions. We'll be making lots more decisions in the third part of the programme coming up in just a few moments' time. So welcome back to the third and final part of Backchat this week. Disappointingly, no one suggested that they're going to put money behind a Cumbrian franchise this week, but there's still time for one of these three guests to do that. Danny Lockwood from League Weekly Newspapers, Gareth Walker from the Daily Mirror, and Luke Robinson, legend. Simple as that. We try and list all his clubs, but we've only got 15 minutes in the third part to go, so we won't do that. Right, let's talk about the Championship, because I mean, we touched on the Championship in previous weeks, and it is for me the most fascinating part of Rugby League at the moment. I mean, the Super League is going to develop and flourish and all the rest of it. But the what a start for the way the championship's gone. London Broncos still top of the tree.
Yeah, they're the good news story, and they have been from when Andrew Henderson reinvented them. He saved them. I think he kept them afloat. He built them. He's handed the reins on to Danny Ward, who's doing a terrific job, coach of the year, you'd say, right now down there. And there's some competition. Toulouse are looking dangerous. You know, they're in and there. Featherstone have always got you know, a performance in them, you hope, and especially when you get them at home. The big news story, I think, the big surprise to all of us that love the championship, because it is a terrific competition with some great rugby, is Leigh Centurions, and they remain pretty much in free fall. And I think that I saw Derek Beaumont came out this weekend and kind of put his heart on his sleeve and said, I'm still here, we're still trying, we're busting a gut, we really want this to work. But nobody's been able to put the finger on exactly what's gone wrong there.
No, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, their salary, they must be close to the salary cap. They're all experienced players. They've got a good, experienced coaching staff. Unfortunately, they lost one of them a couple of weeks ago, didn't they? But can you explain it?
When I looked at their squad at the beginning of the year, I actually thought they had a better squad than the one that were in Super League nearly.
Yeah.
You know, the signings that they made, I thought were incredible. The coaching staff, the experience. I mean, Kieran Purtell's now he's been around clubs, St Helens, Huddersfield, you know, England Knights. He's been around for 15, 20 years nearly. You know, Kieran Cunningham's behind the scenes as well. Do you think the coaching staff and experience they've got there? But for some reason, it's not clicking.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, they got a massive £500,000 handout from the other Super League clubs, a sort of unauthorised parachute payment that caused a lot of upset in the championship, because it really skewed the playing field. So you do have to ask, you know, what those Super League clubs who give up 50 grand a piece pretty much are thinking they've done with the money. And I think if you're a Leaf fan, you're scratching your head and saying, hold on, we were just waiting for the top four and our coronation and procession back into the £1 million game. If we don't go automatically back up into Super League, that now looks like 1,000,000 miles away, and you have to worry, as committed as Derek Beaumont is, you have to worry about the future of the club if this continues, because they need to turn a corner and turn it really quickly.
Are they rescuable this season?
Well, it's a big aspect. I think I'm right in saying that no team that's made the top four in the qualifier has lost more than 8 games. So they're sitting there with 5 defeats already. Yeah. You think they've still got to go to Toulouse, play Toronto twice more, London home and away, go to Featherstone. I think Kieran Purtell was quoted at the weekend saying we're almost going to have to win every game from now. And in that competition, even with this experienced squad that they've got, it's very difficult to see it. So they're up against it.
Yeah.
The problem for me is what normally happens is when a coach gets the sack. Yeah. I mean, I've said it before, you should sack a coach every week, because you normally get a reaction, don't you? There's normally a reaction from the players. They're not feeling loved by the coach, or something's going on behind the scenes. They don't agree with his tactics or whatever it may be. But I just think it's not a good sign when the coach leaves and there's not a reaction from the players.
But I mean, again, I didn't see the game, but those who went to the Featherstone game that they lost said they were a lot better in that Featherstone game, and they probably should have won, and you know, they lost it at the end. Martin Ridyard maybe had a point or two to prove, and had an outstanding game in that game. And I was talking to one of the league players after that, and he said it's a question of confidence now. Yeah. That it is confidence. That if we get the confidence back, we're okay. I mean, does it come down to that?
Well, I think so. I mean, Kieran Purtell, look, he's got plenty of experience as well. He's a very good coach.
Kieran Cunningham's there.
Kieran Cunningham's there, you know, wealth of experience. So it's obviously not that. Confidence is massive in sport. Sometimes you don't know where it goes and you don't know where it comes back from, but it is. Look, I sort of said it to us, you know, our team not long ago. You're never as bad as what you think you are when you're losing, and you're never as good as what you think you are when you're winning. Yeah. And professional sport is about fine margins, and that difference between losing and winning and having confidence is. And
the championship is a pretty brutal place to find it out as well, because it is so competitive, and some of those clubs have a real spirit engendered among, you know, those guys, and they go out with great belief, and nobody comes in our backyard and walks away with the spoils. So Leigh have got it all to do, but in the meantime, the top clubs are ploughing on regardless and looking good value as well.
The other word I'd say mentioned at Leigh this week was anxiety. I think when there was so much put on them this year that they were going to win, like you said, they were waiting for the top 4, weren't they? Yeah. And when can you remember a team that was so, favourites for a competition losing 5 of the first 6? It doesn't very often happen in sport, and maybe they are anxious around the place that they've not lived up to these great expectations.
Yeah. I mean, 20 minutes into that first game against Toronto, you thought, well, there's no problems here. They're going to have a good season. So they've got the capabilities there, haven't they?
And there was a lot of emotion in that game, I think, wasn't there?
Yeah.
All the lead players coming back there, and the way the game turned around as well. You wondered how much of an effect that's had and how they've not recovered from that, really.
Yeah. Do London keep this going? I mean, it's not the deepest of squads, but do they keep this going?
It's not, but again, we'll come back to that culture thing and that belief thing and that winning mentality, and when you've got a tight bunch of guys who are, and whoever is lining up behind the first 17, they're just eager for their chance. So, yeah, I think it continues, Dave. I think they've got enough quality in there, and you look at the way that they absolutely hammered Batley.
Yeah, they're not just beating teams,
are they?
Toronto as well.
They're doing it in style, which with a prop forward for a coach, you'd have to say, where's that coming from?
And the other great thing about them is the number of London lads that's come into that team.
Absolutely.
So we've seen the halfback James Meadows, the hooker Sam Davis, I think, scored at weekend.
I tell you, you look at the Sheffield team as well now. The Sheffield team's got about 4 or 5 London lads in there as well. So people who say, why are we wasting our money in London? Well, one, we're not, because it's David Hughes who's putting the money in. And two, they are producing the players, aren't they? I mean, you'll have come across plenty in Super League as well, but they're still coming through at the young level too.
From Louis McCarthy's Cars book to club, they sort of started the trend, and I think we was mentioning off air, weren't we, how many kids are actually playing down in London at the moment.
Yeah. It's a massive rugby league area. It is. The problem is that we can talk about if we can't break through in Manchester or Liverpool, we have repeatedly failed. Depending how you measure success and failure in London, I would say right now it's a success of a really good community club that's building a base again, and its time may come again in Super League. You'd like to think so. I think we'd all love to see that.
It'd be nice to see a stat of how many London Broncos produced players are playing first team rugby now, because I suspect that will compare very favourably with everybody bar maybe your top 4 or 5 Super League.
Well, I think that I'm going back a few years now when London was by numbers the 4th biggest rugby league playing region in the UK. And it's massive in schools. And I have friends down in London who are rugby union types, but whose kids play rugby league on the weekend and absolutely love it.
Yeah. I'll tell you what would be interesting. People talk about bringing the county games back, don't they, at various intervals. We've probably talked about it every other week on this programme. Lancashire, Yorkshire, and we always say we should throw a Cumbrian team in there, and we probably should. But what about a London Origin team? A London Origin team?
Absolutely.
They're bringing it back, aren't they, for 19s?
Are they?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're bringing back... I don't know if I'm supposed to be saying that.
I think
the whispers that I'm hearing, it's not being set in stone, but the whispers that I'm hearing that they might be bringing back Yorkshire, Lancashire, and I'm a massive, I know I probably spoke about it many times before, I'm a massive advocate of it. Yorkshire, Lancashire, we'll throw a Cumbrian team in, throw a London team in. I just think the more underneath international level sort of competitions that we can get, more representative competitions we can get, the better it'll be for young kids and us moving forward international.
I think the people who always get in the way of innovations like this are the administrators and the people who pay the wages and not the players. Because if you ask a player he wants to pull on a Yorkshire, Lancashire or Cumbria shirt, he's going to bite your hand off. And if it means an extra game on a Wednesday night, he doesn't care, I don't think. The opportunity to be representative is massive, and so we talk about expansion and growth and new ideas. Well, let Eddie Hearn have that one then. Put on the new county championship and see what we can do with that. Maybe play it in Liverpool and Manchester.
Well,
it's where you were born though. None of this origin rubbish that Aussies do, where your first club. I once had to play for Red Rose County. It broke my heart. It broke my heart. No, I only ever played for them once. I played for Yorkshire all the way. Where your first club, your first senior club, that origin rubbish that Aussies do, none of that. You play where you're born.
I tell you what's interesting. We were talking about this a little earlier, weren't we? What one conundrum that's been thrown up with the start that Lee have made to this season, the position that Bradford are in. We talk about this 20 clubs now. There's letters going around that there's 20 clubs going to be invited to the party. They'll get the funding. No one else will. Lee are outside that 20 at the moment, as you were saying, and Bradford likewise are outside that 20 at the moment. So it is that snapshot element of rugby league again.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not opposed to having 2 top divisions of 10. If a strong second tier would be great for me. But I think it's borderline disrespectful. There's just 2 lots of 20. There are 38 professional clubs in this sport.
Are they all giving to rugby league though, or are they surviving on handouts?
You can ask that of some clubs at the very top for the amount of money that they're getting, through the Sky money and what the players they're producing, the number of people at the games. Are they providing for the sport? To me, there's 38 professional. I'm all for this strong second tier, but we need a plan for the whole lot. And you know, like your likes of Lee and Bradford are outside that 20 at the moment, but they can be just as big as most of the clubs at the top table. It needs to be an overall view for me.
I'm not so sure that we have got 38 professional clubs, because the vast majority of those 38 clubs, you know, probably 80 or 90% of their revenues over a season come from the RFL, and they're not generated either by their commercial activities or people through the gate. And I would argue, as much as Rochdale Hornets is your club and everything, Gareth, that Rochdale Mayfield is probably a better run organisation at times, not to be disrespectful to them or either. I think that you're talking about Lee being outside that parameters of 20 clubs, Dave. I think the argument in this will be based on the criteria for being inside that 20, and I think you would find that Lee would be inside that 20.
Yeah, I'm sure they would.
And I'm sure that Bradford absolutely would be inside that 20, because it is how you dress up the qualification, isn't it? Yeah. Because if we are talking about separating the wheat from the chaff, and I'm kind of with you, I think I'm happy with where we are.
Go on, give us a list then. Who's the 20 clubs? If you say the 12 Super League clubs at the moment, that goes without saying.
Halifax second, the 13th.
Halifax.
They are. Yeah, Dewsbury and Batley have got to be in.
But this is what happens when you go towards when sport is not decided on the field for me.
Yeah.
So I struggle with this whole concept of this is your 20 super clubs or whatever. We're a sport. You decide your best 20 clubs on the field for me.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you can.
No, seriously, who would they be? Who would your 20 be? So you've 12 Super League clubs.
So you've got your 12 Super League clubs.
You've got Toulouse, Toronto,
London, Featherstone, Halifax. Got to have Dewsbury Batley in there.
You got 17. You got 17. So you're saying you got.
No. But I think at this point,
Lee, Bradford, 19.
Yeah, Lee and Bradford, and then I think
who's your 20th?
Well, I think you probably will find out if we're going to get a New York venture. If they get invited to the party.
Yeah.
But that's why we're
missing out on that. We've got no Colombian clubs in there. Barrow, Workington, Whitehead. We're not bothered about them then.
Of course we're bothered about them.
Gone.
Marwan's going to...
No York, who have the potential, as we've seen in recent weeks.
So all of a sudden you're back to 38.
You're
back to 38, aren't you? So you are where you are. Except that the truth is, the brutal truth of it is, Dave, is that probably 18 of them are going to have to find a way of surviving off their own wit and their own funds.
Yeah.
And that is the direction of travel right now, whether Gareth or I like it or not.
I'd rather you prune from the bottom. You'd look at the clubs that, the clubs who Hemel Hempstead, for example, and I'm sorry to Hemel fans watching on, but the fact that they're all northern-based lads, there's nothing going on in Hemel at all now, despite all that early promise.
I think they are running a reserve team, aren't they, again this year? They have,
but you look at the bottom and think, well, those are clubs that are not really providing anything, and you get rid of them first.
But you look at some, let's pluck a club out there, London Scholars, for example, who've been going for however many years.
Yeah.
They provide an outlet for guys who are not quite good enough to play full-time rugby league in London, to play part-time professional rugby league in London. And I don't think we should underestimate, and the work they do in that community as well, they do a lot of it in that Tottenham area that shouldn't be underestimated or disrespected by people at the top table.
And how good the Newcastle setup is at the moment, and the potential for Newcastle. Absolutely. You want Newcastle.
It's a real tricky one for me, because basically cutting from the bottom, it's about the previous topic about expansion.
Yeah.
So it's a real tricky. Do we just stay to the heartland clubs and get rid of everybody else, or do we actually try to invest and try and grow the sport?
I think that for what they get each year now, the League One clubs are at about £75,000 a year. To me, I'd rather see those clubs given that in their communities to continue the role than a Super League club signed another, with no disrespect, average overseas.
But you see, your amateur clubs, your St Jude's, your Eastmoors, they would say, well, give us the money, because we're the ones who are actually developing the kids.
Well, maybe we can provide a structure where they can come in from below them, and if they earn that right, then I've no opposition to that. Danny quoted Rochdale Mayfield. They have got an unbelievably good junior setup, and this is replicated at other clubs. Yeah. I have no issue with that door being open and there to earn that, but I think you've got to have that lower level in community clubs where they are given some money to try and help build the game in their area. And
there's not enough money. That's the problem the game's got. We've not enough money.
We don't. And I do think there is a separation coming between those lower clubs in League One and the ones that are scrabbling to hang on to the Championship. I think they have to find, ultimately, there's a bit of natural selection going on here, and they do have to find their way, and they do have to learn how to live like a St Jude's or a Wigan St Pat's or an Eastmoor or a Normanton, where you're going to be this weekend, Dave. Those are terrific community clubs, and a lot of these League One clubs that are feeding off the RFL teat are going to have to learn how to do what those community clubs are doing a little bit better.
You'll have an argument then. You say Keighley, who run a reserve team which provides players in that local area the opportunity to play semi-professional rugby league, and we've got Super League clubs picking up however point, whatever million, who can't run more than one team. I think it's an
We're going to have to leave it. We're run right out of time. Thank you very much, chaps, for joining us today. Fantastic discussion as ever. Don't forget, Rod's back next week for another edition of Back Chat, so tune in for that. And here's a reminder of what you can watch on this very channel in the next weeks or so. The next live Rugby League coming up on Premier Sports is Rochdale against Toronto, Friday the 23rd, 7:30. We're live, 7:45 kickoff. And you can check out all the action on Free Sports by going to www.freesports, don't forget the s.tv. But that's as far as we go today. Thanks to our guests, to Danny, to Luke and to Gareth, and we'll see you next week.